The 1950s were an era of automotive excess, massive fins, over-the-top chrome, and luxury features that were more about impressing your neighbors than improving the driving experience. While some cars became icons, others were big, bold, and completely impractical. Some were unreliable, others were too expensive, and a few were just plain dumb ideas from the start. Here are 19 cars from the 1950s that were all show and no substance. Join us for the ride and let us know which one you think is the worst. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Speed and Style for more classic car content. 1956 Dodge La Femme, the for women marketing disaster. Dodge had this genius idea. What if we made a car just for women? But instead of actually designing something useful, they just painted a regular Dodge pink and threw in a matching handbag, umbrella, and compact mirror. Stereotype much? The car had no special features over a regular model, no way of bettering the driving experience, and like I mentioned was just outdated 1950s stereotypes in car form. Shockingly, women didn't fall for the automotive equivalent of, "It's pink, you'll love it." Sales flopped, and Dodge quietly killed the idea after 2 years. 1958 Edsel Corsair, Ford's $250 million mistake. Ford thought the Edsel would be the next big thing, and it kind of was, but not in the way Ford would have hoped. It was one of the biggest automotive failures ever, not the least of the reasons for which is the fact that Edsel is Ford's own son's name. That toilet seat grille? Hideous. The push-button transmission? Placed in the steering wheel hub, where no one could find it. And the price? Too high for budget buyers, and too low for luxury buyers. Adjusted for inflation, Ford lost the modern equivalent of $2.5 billion trying to make the Edsel happen. It didn't, and it became a case study in how never to launch a car. 1953 Kaiser Dragon, the vinyl-wrapped oddity. Kaiser wanted the Dragon to scream luxury, but instead, it just screamed bad decisions. It had a vinyl roof designed to look like bamboo, it lacked power steering, air conditioning, or a V8 option, ew, and it had just 118 horsepower, which is about the acceleration of a lawnmower. Kaiser thought it was exotic. Buyers thought it was weird. Only 1,277 were sold before the Dragon went extinct. Kaiser, if you're going to call something the Dragon, you better make sure it breathes fire. Okay, well, maybe don't do that. 1957 Cadillac El Dorado Brougham, luxury overload. Cadillac stuffed every luxury feature imaginable into this car, and it was just too much. Air suspension? Broke constantly. Memory power seats? Fancy, but pointless. Built-in minibar? Great way to get yourself a DUI. At $13,000, which might sound like a steal, but bear in mind, this is 1957 and that was the average price of a house, this thing was a nightmare to maintain. But a mechanic's favorite car, for their bank accounts. 1955 Ford Thunderbird, the little sports car that couldn't. Ford hyped up the Thunderbird as a Corvette rival, then forgot to make it a sports car. That's like calling a minivan a race car. The thing was too heavy to be fast, too soft riding to handle well, and was more of a luxury cruiser than a performance car. This time Ford was smart enough to realize their mistake and rebranded the Thunderbird as a personal luxury car, and suddenly it became a hit. But as a Corvette rival? Yeah, no. 1958 Packard Hawk, a brand in freefall. Packard, once a luxury powerhouse, was already dying by the time it made the Hawk. Fiberglass nose? Looked awful. 275 horsepower supercharged V8? Fast in a straight line, but handled like a refrigerator on wheels. Build quality? Questionable at best. Packard only sold 588 units before completely disappearing, which tells you everything you need to know. 1958 Dodge Royal Lancer, chrome overload. Yep, not too much to say about this one. Push-button transmission? Always broke. Handling? Think cruise ship with white wall tires. Reliability? Well, mechanics would probably call it one of their favorite cars because it made their bank accounts fat. Yep, this thing was a fashion statement, but not much else. 1953 Nash Healey, the pricey oddball. Built in Britain, styled in Italy, powered by a 140 horsepower American engine that couldn't outrun a station wagon, and more expensive than a Jaguar XK120, but slower and heavier. Despite its multinational exoticness, at $6,000, buyers laughed, and Nash abandoned it after just 3 years. 1957 DeSoto Adventurer convertible, gilded excess. DeSoto slapped a gold trim and a 345 horsepower Hemi into the Adventurer convertible, but while it was powerful, it was a nightmare to handle and burned fuel like a jet engine. Was it powerful? You betcha. Did it handle well? No way in heck. Fuel efficient? Not unless you count gallons per mile as a measurement. Costing $4,270 and being a total gas leech on your wallet, it was too expensive and too ridiculous to succeed. 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air convertible, a summer-only icon. The Bel Air convertible looked amazing, but the soft top leaked, visibility was terrible, and it cost way more than the hardtop with no real benefit. A tubular cruiser, but terrible for actual driving. With a leaky roof, bad visibility, and a higher price for fewer features, this was a literal textbook definition of paying more for less. 1956 Lincoln Continental Mark II, overbuilt and overpriced. What is it with these luxury car brands making their cars more pricey than a house? This thing cost $10,000, which was the average price of a house for most people, was 5,000 pounds of over-engineering, and lacked any modern features and guzzled gas. Too expensive for regular buyers and not special enough for the ultra-rich buyers. Lincoln himself would be disappointed. 1958 Plymouth Fury, Christine's problem child. The Plymouth Fury was supposed to be a high-performance, stylish machine that brought muscle to the streets. Plymouth marked it as a fast, aggressive, and powerful car, but the reality didn't live up to the hype. Some might call it the OG muscle car, but it had electrical issues that plagued its owners, starting failures, ignition problems, and bad wiring, and was overhyped as a performance car, but was sluggish in reality. Yeah, it turns out the real-life version of these cars was a much bigger nightmare for your wallet than Christine could ever be for your dreams. Somehow today, it's beloved by collectors, but in 1958, it was an overpriced disappointment. 1955 Studebaker Speedster, tacky and underpowered. Studebaker tried to make a bold statement with the Speedster, but instead it became a prime example of style over substance. The most striking feature of the Speedster was its bright two-tone paint jobs, often in eye-searing combinations like yellow and green or pink and black. The quilted leather interior, flashy chrome accents, and distinctive body styling made it look exotic, but once you got behind the wheel, the excitement quickly faded. It was powered by a 259 cubic inch V8 with 185 horsepower, which might sound decent, but the Speedster was heavier than expected, making acceleration and performance underwhelming. The cramped seating made it uncomfortable, and the car lacked any true innovation to make it stand out beyond its wild styling. At $3,253, it was one of the most expensive Studebakers ever, but it wasn't competitive against more refined, better performing cars from Ford or Chevy. It may have looked luxurious, but in reality, the Speedster was just another gimmick that failed to keep Studebaker afloat. RIP. 1959 Cadillac Series 62 convertible, peak tail fin madness. If you think of 1950s automotive excess, this car is likely what comes to mind. The 1959 Cadillac Series 62 convertible had the tallest tail fins ever put on a car, along with a massive chrome grille and a spaceship-inspired styling. It was a car that was built to stand out, but all that excess came at a cost. At 19 feet long, this thing needed its own zip code. The tail fins were the tallest things ever, and it was difficult to maneuver and pretty much impossible to park. A status symbol? Yeah. A practical car? Not a chance. 1952 Hudson Hornet convertible, a racing legend gone soft. The Hudson Hornet was a dominant force in stock car racing, with a low center of gravity and superior handling that helped it crush the competition in the early 50s. But when Hudson decided to turn it into a luxury convertible, they ruined everything that made it great. The convertible added extra weight, softening the car's once great handling and slowing it down significantly. They added luxury features to make it more comfortable, but this ended up diluting the Hornet's identity as a serious performance car. Buyers who wanted race-inspired machines were disappointed, and luxury car buyers saw better options from Cadillac and Chrysler. Sales were disappointing, and Hudson's decline soon followed as they merged with Nash just a few years later. Instead of being a racing legend, the Hornet convertible became a forgettable footnote, proving that tuning a performance car into a luxury cruiser isn't always a good idea. 1957 Mercury Turnpike Cruiser. Too much of everything. Mercury wanted the Turnpike Cruiser to look futuristic. Instead, they built a cartoon spaceship on wheels. Retractable rear window? Cool in theory, pointless in reality. Push-button transmission? Because who needs reliability? Chrome everywhere? This thing could blind pedestrians on a sunny day. It had a 368 cubic inch V8, but it was too heavy to feel fast and too complicated to stay functional. Owners spent more time fixing gimmicks than driving. Expensive, unreliable, and overstyled. Buyers took one look and said, no thanks. It lasted just 2 years before Mercury sent it to the scrapyard of bad ideas. 1954 Hudson Jet, the small car that killed Hudson. Hudson was famous for big, powerful sedans, so when they tried to make a compact car, they failed spectacularly. Too big to be an economy car, too small to attract Hudson's usual buyers, and too ugly for anyone else. The Jet had awkward proportions, outdated styling, and zero excitement. It wasn't particularly fast, efficient, or desirable, and its high price made sure it stayed on dealership lots collecting dust. Hudson lost millions on this thing, and within a few years, they merged with Nash and disappeared. 1958 Ford Skyliner, the overcomplicated convertible. A retractable hardtop in 1958? Sounds impressive until you realize it was a mechanical nightmare. It took 600 feet of wiring just to lower the roof. It had more switches, relays, and motors than a NASA control panel, and when it worked, the trunk was useless. When it didn't, owners just gave up. The Skyliner was heavier, more expensive, and no better than a regular convertible. It looked cool, but Ford over-engineered it into oblivion. After just 3 years, they pulled the plug, probably because owners were too busy fixing their roofs to buy another one. 1957 Rambler Rebel, the muscle car that nobody wanted. On paper, the Rambler Rebel was a game changer, a family sedan with a massive V8. But there was one problem. Nobody wanted a muscle car from Rambler. 327 cubic inch V8 with 255 horsepower. Fast, but it looked like Grandpa's car. Boring design. Nothing about it screamed performance. And it had an early fuel injection system that was so unreliable, most owners switched back to carburetors. Instead of looking aggressive and exciting, it looked like your dad's grocery getter with a surprise under the hood. The Rebel flopped, proving that muscle cars need more than just horsepower. They need attitude. And there you have it, some of the most over-the-top, over-engineered, and downright ridiculous cars of the 1950s. Some were marketing disasters, some were mechanical nightmares, and some were just, well, bad ideas from the start. But now it's your turn, Motorhead. Which one of these was the worst? Drop your pick in the comments below. Or tell me if I roasted your favorite car a little too hard. But if you like classic cars, muscle cars, and automotive insanity, make sure you subscribe to Speed and Style, hit that like button, and turn on notifications, because trust me, this was just the beginning.